That girl says I've been in land titles for 35 years. That's the first time I've ever heard somebody paying it by silver.
No doubt. No doubt.
It's currency.
There's nothing wrong with it. It's lawful money, and it'd be interesting to see how they handle it.
By the way, there are a bunch of corporations trying to say they will not accept cash. Show them the Currency Act and tell them they'll be charged criminally if they try to force you to pay by electronic debit card. It will not accept your cash. I got TELUS to put the cash kiosk back in downtown Edmonton when they'd had it missing for 2 years. I pointed the Currency Act to him, to the president of TELUS, and told him that I'd charge him and bring him into court. He didn't put it back. 2 weeks later, they put the cash kiosk back in the TELUS building.
Right on.
They want to get rid of cash, throw you into a plastic currency situation, so it's your choice.
But that's, again, I can't think of everything. It's a good thing somebody is doing something, and just do something. You know, fight it every way you can. In Ontario, they had photo radar. Okay, I don't know if you know this, but they had photo radar for about 3 months, and then they stopped doing it. You know why? They got 250,000 court cases. It didn't matter if those people were right. It didn't matter a bit. They can't handle that many court cases. So they decided, well, we're not going to do this anymore.
Same thing in BC.
No doubt. And so the point is that you don't have to be on point. It's good that when you do your homework and you rattle their cage and you rein them in, that's even better. But you have to even be on point. Have you ever seen a road that goes along in a straight line, and then when it comes to some guy's land, it turns and goes around the outside of the land to where it's going back straight again? I've seen that.
I haven't. I'm trying to visualize it. So.
You haven't noticed it.
There's quite
I've
a lot.
seen it.
I've seen it.
I've definitely
I've
seen
seen
it.
it.
Guy's land.
That's because those landowners, huh?
And when it comes to some guy's land, it turns and goes around.
Right.
Only if he stands up for his land.
He might have to stand up, or maybe he just has a land patent. He's just never transferred the land. You know, there's people in Arizona that I know that have never transferred the land. They just pass it down in the family, and they've never transferred it, and they've never paid property taxes, and they don't even, it's like they don't exist. This is because those landowners didn't really own the land. If it goes through your land, they don't own the land, except for the guy whose land they went around. That's right. That's the only way they can get eminent domain is if you have colorable title. This is the same thing with the Sturgeon Indian Reserve up by Grand Prairie, right?
Yeah.
It goes 4 lanes up until it gets to the Sturgeon Indian Reserve, and then it goes 2 lanes through the reserve, and then it goes back to 4 lanes. Well, it's because the Indians wouldn't let them make 4 lanes there. They wouldn't give up their land. I don't blame them.
I've heard that
They ought to be charging them rent for their land.
I've heard that they've now got an agreement with them.
Well, maybe they have. I don't know. But so the Indians still had to agree, didn't they? Spanish land grants in Arizona. Evidence of your usufruct. First of all, they call it real estate. That's the best evidence of all. An estate, you don't own it. They call it, remember that one court case, they talked it an equitable interest, right? You have an equitable interest in your land. That is all, nothing else. An equitable interest is what some crook on the bench decides. You pay a yearly rent. They can take it away from you. If you don't pay your taxes, or then just for any reason at all, it doesn't matter. They can take it away from you. You don't own it. If your land has easements, if your land is subject to zoning rules and regulations, if you pay for your land with a promissory note, it creates a usufruct. The way you defeat the usufruct is you have to pay for the land with gold or silver coin, and you have to say it in a deed. How can you have true loyal title to land? Bring forward all the rights and privileges of the original land patent, pay for your land with gold or silver coin, and common law are always spelled out. Okay, if you look at those land patents, those numbers on those land patents are always spelled out.
What about a Crown grant?
Well, there's a Crown grant right here. They're spelled out.
Is that same then?
Sure.
Because I know somebody's got one.
So what can you do with the mortgage you have in place right now? Did you give gold to send it silver? Pay it off?
Huh?
Pay it off? You got a mortgage in place right now with the mortgage company. Did you send in silver and pay it off?
I wouldn't send them silver, I'd send them their commercial paper and pay it off. Huh?
Bill of exchange?
Whatever, however, if you can get it paid off, pay it off. And then, once you do that, transfer it, and when you transfer it, you know, get a company or something, transfer it to the company, or transfer it to your brother or something like that, you see what I'm saying? And bring forward all the rights and privileges of the land patent, and use gold or silver coin for the transaction.
Is there a big difference between a mortgage and a line of credit?
Well, the mortgage is got a property, something as lien, as collateral. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Where a line of credit may not.
Well, they're either using my properties as for my line of credit.
Oh, well, then it's the same.
But they wouldn't give me a mortgage because they claim that I owe Revenue Canada money. And I told them that was none of their business.
I think the difference is on a line of credit, you are only obliged to pay the interest.
That's
Yeah.
my
But
opinion.
that it is a demand loan so that they can bring in the loan at any time.
Yeah, well,
They're
and that's-
original loans.
There's no
That's
term
possible.
on it.
What I would do if I was you, is put another lien on a property somehow, like get your brother to loan you some money, or at least on paper loan you some money.
Arcadian on
That's
it.
what I would do. And if you have a big enough lien, I mean, Revenue Canada's lien is a third-party lien, okay? If you get a first-party lien, the first-party lien takes precedence over third-party lien.
First in time, first in line.
Yeah, but they got the original lien.
Huh?
They'd have the, like, if he's already got a lien against that property, if his brother took a lien out against it, they still have to pay the original first.
Right, the first lien, right? But then there's third-party liens and first-party liens too. And the first-party liens take precedence over third-party liens.
Acadians, bank's got the first Acadian on it.
Well, so the bank would be in first place, but the bank isn't for the whole property, is it? I mean, I don't know how much the Revenue Canada lien is yet.
Generally, the lien is only against the building.
What you gotta do is you gotta go to a CRA, ask for your BIN number, business identification number, get it in your strawman's name, which is your all capital letter name. Then you do an agreement between your strawman and the real man, and then you leave it up. That's the only way you can get around it. Because when you entered into that contract vis-à-vis the straw man, you entered in under fraud because you didn't even know you had a straw.
Yeah, the contract I have is the bank employee signed it, but he signed it as a witness only. He's got no signing authority for the bank. He signed it as a commissioner, no witnessing that I was the guy that signed the document.
So it's in a sub
That's when they
contract.
get a letter. Right.
But that's a whole other story for another day, kind of.
Yeah, that's getting into commerce, and we're not doing commerce today.
Okay?
Now, another thing you need to do is legal description should be meets and bounds. Again, I've done them without the meets and bounds legal description, and it worked. But meets and bounds, I mean, you need to do it as good as you possibly can. So if you can do it meets and bounds, that's best. That means getting a surveyor out to come out and give you a meets and bounds legal description instead of lot one of some subdivision. See what I'm saying? But in mine, if you notice in mine, I did it's a lot number, okay? It's 20 acres, but it's still a lot number. But it'll still work if you do a lot number, but it's better if you can do meets and bounds.
Can I interrupt just for a second?
Okay.
I have to go for about 30 minutes, but I want to make sure that you time your breaks because the cafeteria closes at 5:30. So if anybody wants to get in there and get anything, you've got to do it, I would suggest around 5 o'clock. And then it's going to be closed at 5:30, and then those doors going into it, you can't get through there after they close it, okay?
Okay.
So just so you know, but I'll be back in 30 minutes.
Okay, well, it's what, 10 to 4 now, so, yeah,
Well, just so you have a break around 5 so that they can
Right.
go and, if anybody wants to grab a sandwich or a pop, it'll be your last opportunity.
Okay.
Or a coffee.
Okay. Okay, well, we're making pretty good time with this anyways. Okay, so, a patent from the original people would trump any other patent. And I think I wouldn't have a problem taking that into court in a heartbeat. Do a quiet title action. Because almost everything is done these days with commercial paper. The courts can presume that commercial paper was used. You can defeat their presumption by putting in a land transfer document the type of payment that was received, gold or silver coin. Upon receipt, and this is just an example of what you put in the deed. When you get true allodial title, you do not tell them that you purchased your land. Okay, that's another thing. Okay, because that's a commercial transaction. Or bought the land. You tell them you converted some silver or gold to land. Conversion is common law, and I've seen court cases that talked about it that way. Color of law. This is Indian Act. In this act, surrendered lands means a reserve or part of reserve or any interest therein, the legal title of, to which remains vested in Her Majesty, that has been released or surrendered by the band for whose use and benefit it was set apart.
That's the Canada Land Surveys Act as well, it states the same thing.
Is that right?
Yep, section 25.
So it's the interesting thing here is that surrendered lands, in other words, I guess there was a war going on and somebody surrendered. And I don't know, again, my attitude is that they stole the land. You know what I mean? They're just trying to justify it with their statute here, you know? Saying that they surrendered it, yeah, right. So anyways, that's the end of that one. I really think that Indian title would trump a crown title any day, and with the court rulings the way they are, you know, I wouldn't have a problem doing a quiet title action once I got an Indian title. The Indians would sell the title, sell the land out underneath the crown. And what's the crown gonna do? Because the Indians own it anyways. And it'd be interesting. What I would do, quite frankly, is if I got Indian title, I would put up a big sign on the land, and I'd say you're leaving Alberta and you're entering foreign territory. This is Indian land belonging to the Cree tribe or whatever. You see what I'm saying? And it's private property, no trespassing or something like that. See what I'm saying? That's exactly what.
Trespassers will be shot on sight.
I wouldn't do that. But what you'd be doing is it's going on foreign territory. That's foreign territory, and this is under Indian law, and et cetera, et cetera. That's what I'd be telling them. And I wouldn't put Indian. I don't like using that word. I'd put original people, First Nations. You know, the First Nation, the Cree Nation, something like that. I mean, that's exactly what I'd put.
And never use Aboriginal.
Yeah, no, that's Australian. But anyways, I think they got it right. First Nations, original people. I like those words. But you know, and they could sell it all. Matter of fact, you know, in my opinion, and I wish that there was more people here to hear this, but you know, the First Nations, they need to start acting like nations. And what they need to do is they need to start doing treaties of recognition. And the only treaty they would want to enter in with Canada would be a treaty of recognition. And it basically says that we recognize that you exist. And what they can do it amongst each other. And I know the Republic of Texas would do a treaty of recognition with them. And part of that is you got to define your boundaries. And so they could essentially define their boundaries as being all the land and push these corporate criminals off into the ocean and back to where they belong. And they could push them out. They could literally push them out and start regulating them, you know, and all the rest of it. If they wanted to, they got to get it together though. They got to get it together. Anyways, it's food for thought.
Glenn, I just want to tell the people, there's a First Nations fellow in Saskatchewan, I know him. His children were taken away from him, and he went in with 4 clan mothers into the court with the document with the Queen's name beside his and a copy of the 1763 proclamation. The judge got scared, red-faced, reversed the order, he had his kids back that afternoon.
Right on, right
The
on,
queen's name was beside his as the claimant.
right on.
That was the trick, the difference, because usually it's the opposite side.
Right,
eh?
right.
He knew who he was, so he
Right.
put her name beside his.
Right. He's essentially saying it's his court.
Yeah.
Can't sue me in my
Well, the
court.
judge was scared,
Can't
red-faced.
sue me in my court.
Give me
They're
my kids
just a
back.
bunch of crooks. They're a bunch of crooks, yes.
Yes, we're all natives because we're caretakers of this land.
Well, that's true, that's true. But they have superior title,
I know.
and I'd be more than willing to, I wanna, you know, let's face it, we have a common enemy, okay? These people are the lowest form of life there is. And they've gone and done things like that they need to be, quite frankly, don't get me going. But the bottom line is that I, you know, we have a common enemy. We can help you. You can help us. And I think that we can work together and affect some very positive change. I mean, you could sell the land out from underneath the crown, you know, and sell some crown land to me. I'll go fight that battle in court. That's not a problem. But I don't think I'd have to fight it in court.
We got lots.
I'm sorry?
We got a lot of land.
Well, there you go.
We got a lot of ground land right
Yeah,
now.
there
And
you go.
Province trying to sell the whole thing without, you know, they're trying to give it out to,
Forestry companies.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Privatization, eh?
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. To their corporate buddies.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and besides, even if they sell it, it doesn't matter because, and this was one thing I'd like to ultimately test, okay? Sure, you could sell us some crown land off there where they don't want it anyways, right? But what happens when you sell us the land that's in downtown Edmonton here underneath the courthouse?
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, that's what I like to do. Yeah, do that one, eh?
Our Alcohol Park is reserved there. Nobody is claiming it, they can sell it out.
Sure, or how about the land underneath the legislature building?
Yeah.
The land underneath the legislature building, and we'll rent it back to you there, province of Alberta.
The bunker.
Well,
There's a bunker there.
This is a bunker?
Yeah, there's.
Yeah, I want the bunker. I want that for my private house there.
The whole, just about the whole city was reserved.
Is that right?
It was, yeah.
No doubt,
Then-
no doubt.
then
No doubt. Well, it's
Capital
still,
went after him for that.
that's what I'm saying, they're a bunch of thieves. You know, they're a bunch of thieves, they're pirates, you know, don't get me going. But, so anyways,
We can
let's,
help vote though.
let's move on. We can, now the real solution is your government, okay? Because they are a bunch of thieves and pirates. But if we do things properly, then we can bring indictments against them, we can convict them, and their courts will recognize it, and you can hurt them in a major way. Even if you don't bring them out here and hang them by the tree, you can still hurt them in their system, big time. Ultimately, at common law, some of the crimes that they're committing, they should be put to death. Hanging is the usual common law penalty, and in my opinion, some of them need to get that. It wouldn't take too many times you hang them, and the rest of them just come right into the line, no problem. But
They did it to Lily Real.
well, so it's time that we, the people, started exercising our rights and asserting ourselves. Anyways, so this is what does your government's about. Why don't we, it's 4 o'clock, why don't we take a break and then we'll take another break at 5 and then.
They gave him a money order, which he put right back in the envelope, sent it right off the record.
All right, so the next step here is, we're talking about de jure government. Now, right now, first of all, to give you a little bit of background, I think I mentioned it before, I was Speaker of the House of Representatives for the Republic of Texas for about 1.5 years. I currently have a diplomatic position with the Republic of Texas. I'm a charge d'affaires with the Republic of Texas. And there are resources available to help you establish your de jure government. And here's my copy of my commission as a charge d'affaires with the Republic of Texas. And,
Want to go back there?
huh?
I want to see it.
Right there.
Charge d'affaires,
Uh-huh.
which is French for speaker.
Well, it's not a consul, it's a charge d'affaires. It's a diplomatic officer, you know. It's, when I was in New York, they wanted me to, they were talking about it, but they never did really give me any final instructions or anything. But they were talking about having me approach some embassies in New York about opening up diplomatic negotiations with the Republic of Texas, but they never did, you know, follow through.
I noticed he signed on the left side.
That's the Secretary of State. The President signed on the right.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So the Republic of Texas, do you have passports or anything?
They're working on that. They don't have them yet, but they have ID cards. So I have a Republic of Texas ID card.
Can anybody become a member of the Republic of Texas?
Well, you gotta live on the land of Texas for at least 6 months. Actually, I'm not sure if you have to do that
Can't just have
anymore.
a mailing box down there?
That's all I got right now, but I actually lived there for a while too.
Yeah, well, have you got dual citizenship then too, or?
Dual nationality, not citizenship, I don't want to do that.
Allegiance by declaration on file.
Okay.
Notice there's no birthday on there.
Yeah, I saw it.
And it's up in lowercase, no zip code.
Yeah.
They know what they're doing. Anyways, okay, so, Canada's a municipal corporation domiciled in the District of Columbia. Canada's in bankruptcy. Income checks are made out to the Receiver General for Canada. And here's a thing, my wife, if you can believe it, she comes back and the first thing she wants to do is get a social insurance number. So this was part of the paperwork. I thought it was interesting. And here's the SEC website showing Canada as a municipal corporation domiciled in the District of Columbia. This is actually a annual report for Indiana and Company. Get a load of this, eh?
3,400,000 stockholders.
Yeah, engaged in providing peace, justice, security, opportunity, health, highways, education, conservation, recreation. It says there on the side, over here, it says every Indiana citizen is a stockholder. So, you think maybe there's an Alberta and Company?
Yep.
And a Canada and Company?
Well, isn't that the reason that we all got those $400 Ralph Klein checks a couple of years back, was
Yeah.
we're all stockholders? Everybody thought Ralph Klein was just being a nice guy.
Yeah, we were out of debt for a while, so
Yeah.
here's the profits.
Here's an interesting thing that I found in the Solicitor General's annual report for 2008, 2009. Says Correctional Services Division expenditures of $19.7 million, that included $17.5 million for salary settlements, as well as $2.2 million for supplies and services. Well, is that all their budget? Think about that for a minute. That's all their budget.
Yeah.
So who's paying for all the jails?
It's coming up for bonds.
The prisoners' bonds are paying for the jails, exactly. So they're probably private too. Bet you they're all private. They're probably not even owned.
Black and white.
What happens to the owners of any corporation when it goes into bankruptcy? The original stock becomes worthless, the creditors become the owners. It's effectively a coup d'etat, if you think about it.
And all the registrants become assets of the creditor.
Who are the creditors for Canada? The International Monetary Fund, the World Bank. The courts have ruled on numerous occasions that the primary responsibilities of the officers of any corporation is to the owners of the corporation. All courts, cities, towns, etc. in Canada are municipal corporations that are sub-corporations of the municipal corporation called Canada. They're all, you go to Dun & Bradstreet, you can find them all. The creditors of these bankrupt corporations are the international banksters, and they operate exclusively under private international law. Other names for private international law are Admiralty Maritime Law, Civil Law, Canon Law, Martial Law. The Magna Carta was signed by a tyrant, King John, in 1215. In 1213, King John swore allegiance to the Vatican with the concessions to the Pope. I've seen Israeli court cases that say that Admiralty Maritime Law goes back to the Babylonian Empire. Government is not reason, it is not eloquence, it is force. It is a dangerous servant and a terrible master. All governments operate under martial law. It is the responsibility of we the people to keep our government under control. There's 3 kinds of martial law. All of this is taken from a court case that I got. It's actually a book called The Non-Ratification of the 14th Amendment by a Judge A.H. Ellett of the Utah Supreme Court. And this is all related to a court case called Diet versus Turner. So there's 3 kinds of martial law. There's full martial law, martial law proper, and there's martial law rule. Full martial law, declaration of martial law is issued, troops are put on the street, used only during wartime, used on a foreign country, or when actually invaded by a foreign power, or to put down an armed rebellion. Okay, so we're not under full martial law. Martial law proper, law of the armed forces, when a captain tells a private what to do, enforced by court-martials. Martial law rule, law of necessity and emergency, allows the domestic use of martial law powers used during peacetime. So that's what we're on, is martial law rule. Evidence of martial law rule, military scripts circulated for money. The action of Congress in passage of the first Legal Tender Act was placed distinctly upon the ground of the existing imperative need of government, and the Legal Tender Clause was urged and adopted as a war measure. Martial law. Military script is legal tender. Military script is a forced loan. The forced loans of 1862 and 1863 in the form of legal tender notes Since March 9, 1933, the United States has been in a state of declared national emergency. Under the powers delegated by these statutes, the President may seize property, organize and control the means of production, seize commodities, assign military forces abroad, institute martial law, seize and control all transportation and communication, regulate the operation of private enterprise, restrict travel, and in a plethora of particular ways control the lives of all American citizens. A majority of the people of the United States have lived all their lives under emergency rule. For 40 years, freedom and government procedures guaranteed by the constitutions have in varying degrees been abridged by laws brought into force by states of national emergency. And this is from the U.S. Senate report number 93-549 dated November the 19th, 1973.
Now, would that be executive orders would fall under the...
Yes, there's lots of executive orders that do all that stuff.
Yeah, and the War Measures Act that we had in Quebec there, 40-some years ago, that with the FLQ, that would have been full martial law, another name for it.
Right.
Yeah.
We brought the troops in.
Right. Yeah. In Quebec.
Yes.
Yeah. This is taken from Article 17 of the Lieber Code. Now, the Lieber Code was published by this guy by the name of Lieber during the Civil War in the United States, and it's the law of war. Okay? And so Article 17, war is not carried on by arms alone. It is lawful to starve the hostile belligerent, armed or unarmed, so that it leads to the speedier subjection of the enemy. So what do you think? Do you think that's happening? I'll bet that's happening on some of the First Nations. I'll bet you that's happening. I mean, they do that all the time. They starve you out. They basically